I'm Rick Murphy, CEO and founder of Cogent Growth Partners. If you're a technology services provider or an MSP thinking about growth, acquisitions, and how to achieve a realistic liquidity strategy or an eventual exit, this show's for you. This is Cogent Conversations.
So we're talking about why MSPs, what questions should they be asking themselves, George, and specifically the financial reality and the math. If a percentage of the revenue that the MSP has depends on the owner personally, does that kill deals?
It could absolutely kill deals. It all depends on how big is that company. I mean, if they're a sizable MSP, the likelihood of that being the case is pretty low generally. But let's just say, again, back to sub 5 million, you never know what you're going to get. It could be one client that's hinging on. It could be 20% of them. It's not a problem if things could be set up and it's still good for the buyer for you to stick around. Because what usually happens is you, as the owner or one of the owners, is the account manager, is the VCIO or something to that effect. That position needs to be there anyway. So the thing that might kill it is the buyer saying, I don't like you as a person or something like that. So if there's a personality clash or culture clash from that respect, then that could be a problem. But just assume that isn't the case. It's a smaller deal as well. The buyer still needs that headcount consolidation because it's the thing they're going to get most of their plus from. It's not so much of an issue as long as they think that everybody's working on the same page and you want to stick around and they know you need to stick around and everybody is working towards that being the case. If they think you're going to fly the coop pretty quickly, they won't do the deal because it is hinging on you. But if that's what you really want to do anyway, that was the thing that, no, Mr. Buyer, I want to do this. This is why I'm selling it. I don't want to do this other stuff. I don't want to have the checkbook. I get it. I'm going to lose some control. I don't want to do it HR. I don't want to deal with bookkeeping. I like taking care of customers. I like being a technical person. And we seem to fit into your company. I do understand. This is the other mentality that selling is. I understand you don't need my 2 administrative people. Maybe right off the bat, or maybe after a year or 6 months, you might be able to phase them out. I get that. It's a business decision. You have to be okay with that. That's probably the hardest thing that any seller has to deal with, even a much bigger company, unless it's a platform or some kind of beachhead, if you will, like somebody going to a different state that's nowhere near them and setting up a sizable beachhead. You usually don't need all the people that are there. That is just how things work. And it's not the technical people. It's typically the G&A people, not the S people. Right? Unless the salespeople aren't good, you shouldn't have them anyway. But it's G&A. So anybody doing hunting and farming, if they're doing their job, they're not going anywhere. That's actually helping you as a seller get the money that you want. But you might not need some of those administrative people. Maybe a very special purchasing person that's doing specific things. Okay, that's a knowledge thing. But some kind of general G&A type of work, you have to be okay with that.
G&A is?
General administrative. Right. General and administrative. So you're, again, an HR person or an internal bookkeeper or something like that, unless there's something special or the buyer actually needs another person because they're just taking on too much and they can't absorb that. Okay. But typically they will have some kind of target on their back and you got to be okay with that as a seller, especially if you want to stick around because something has to give. There has to be a plus going on here. If you're a smaller company, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, because if they're a smaller company, George, and a lot of their clients are their people that they go to church with or, the kids' baseball team or things like that. Yeah. And if they're planning on leaving, they have to expect that some of those clients may not be there. So they really have to think about this sale.
Correct. Yes. And that question does always get asked to make sure that we're not dealing with some kind of, weird tie-in. Especially, we even ask for things like bartering. Like, it looks like you charge this guy not so much. Right. Why is that? Well, because he does this for us, so we do this,
Right.
and we
Cuts the
don't charge him as much.
grass. Yeah. Yeah.
That's like a real small company type of thing, but um, you never know. I mean, there's also people take this out of their EBITDA. They take out the charity. We always ask, if I take this out, is that for a customer? Yes.
Mm.
Are they going to go away if you don't pay that charity? Because that's kind of part of your deal. If the answer is yes, then you're not adding that back. That is an expense that your company pays. It's kind of like marketing, right? You can't do that, and it happens more than you would think. So you have to understand all of that stuff going in as an absolutely great question to ask. And sometimes it's for slightly bigger companies too, especially the charity thing that I just said. Or I always do this particular event for this company, and it's like 20 grand a year. Okay, what if I didn't do it? Well, you're probably going to lose a 50 grand a year client. All right, we're going to have a problem. There was a give and take going on here that we can't stop. So all of that has to be thought out, and that's also why the whole opportunity and fit first, money last thing is important. You got to understand what kind of a company, as a seller, fits you. I ask this question all the time when I'm doing discovery calls. It's okay, if we're going to go down a path, what do you think is the ideal buyer for you in terms of what are your customers going to like? Your employees are not going to revolt against them. What kind of a setup does it need? Because I see you don't have an office, so it's all remote. What if somebody needed you to come to a local office? Is that going to be a problem? I just start throwing questions out there like that, especially now, well post COVID, everybody has figured out, what they can and can't do and what employees like, what they don't like, what customers are good with, what they're not good with. So that fit and opportunity stuff is really, really important to understand. And sometimes they just stare at me like they have no idea what I'm talking about. So I have to explain it a little bit more. And they determine, maybe I'm not ready yet. Can you call me back in a couple of months? Because I never thought about that, because I'm trying to weed that out so I can bring them to the best fit possible to not waste time as well from our client base, because just it's just a bad idea to bother doing that. So understanding what's going to work for your company from that respect is going to be really, really, really important.
It's a worthy exercise the MSP should contemplate is like, what happens if the owner steps away for 90 days? What breaks in sales with clients and ops? Try to figure that out.
Yes, that is an awesome way to look at it. It's kind of a graduation point, right? Where you've actually that gets you to president, CEO of the company, not chairman of the board. Chairman of the board, half the people don't even know your name,
right?
Kind of thing. Your customers don't care where you are; they actually get annoyed when you step in. But to truly hit that CEO level, you should be able to not have your hands in the day to day and be able to go disappear for a couple of weeks, if not a month. You just progressively test that out to say that I know it's going to break, so I fix that, or it's not breaking anymore, so I'm in a good spot. If you could, that actually is one of the keys to being able to potentially kind of pull back on your cost in the company. So that's where it makes a little more sense that, okay, I don't need to replace you, and maybe I can give you credit on your trailing 12 EBITDA because you really don't do anything. Not chairman of the board, don't do anything, but all you do is check on some things once in a while, have high level meetings, and think of some new stuff to do. It's that kind of strategic thinking. Maybe I can add you back. Maybe. Regardless, I don't have to replace you, so you can leave. So that's the one plus, right? The buyer gets that plus, because other people forget the fact that if they do have their hands in the company all the time, that they call themselves president, but buyer's like, yeah, I got to hire a account manager because you take care of 20 clients, or you're the sales guy. I don't have to hire a sales guy, but my modeling is going to take you out. So this plus 8% every year you grow isn't going to be there. It just changed the dynamic of the thing, not the price tag you probably thought about. So all those things do come into play. So yes, the best thing is graduating to chairman of the board. Next best is truly being the CEO of the company, where you're not there to make the company function. It's very, very high level stuff. So being able to take, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks where you're barely getting text messages or taking one phone call is awesome. And it does make a difference. That's go back to what you said before, your SLI and evolve and all that, the company's operational maturity, right? It makes a difference. It also might make you saleable or not saleable, so that you could be a $10 million company where the operational maturity isn't all that great. It's just not a given that it's awesome. And that could make you not really a viable option for a whole lot of different buyers. Or if they can do it or they want to do it, it's not worth as much money. Honestly, that's what it comes down to.
What is the difference in your eyes, George? The difference between a manager and a leader? I've had to have some rough conversations in my MSP with some managers who thought they were leaders, and kind of ego gets involved there a little bit involved. But in your eyes, what's the difference between a manager and a leader?
Well, a manager is usually just kind of shuffling paperwork versus somebody that people are listening to, that they're taking advice from, that they're looking up to, that they're taking mentorship of. That's a leader. A manager is not exactly the same thing. Some people think also, just being somewhere for 10 years makes them a manager or something. I don't think managing without being able to lead is truly a management position. I think you're just, you could be called a manager, and if you're really not a leader, then you're also probably doing the work too. So you're managing 3 people, but you're the 4th, versus the leader that's kind of not doing so much of the work. It's more oversight, leadership, putting people in the right seats at the right time, giving stuff to the right people, teaching people what they don't know, seeing where they're struggling, paying attention to those kind of things versus, hey, this thing is due by the end of the week and we all got to get it done. That's managing. That's not really leading anything.
But managers are still very important, because we need somebody to see those metrics. We need somebody to get goals set up and look at the day to day. It's just that a leader kind of leads.
Leader leads, and a leader will actually utilize those metrics. That's part of their job, versus a manager that's not really a leader. They're just making sure that the stuff is in there, right? The tickets are in the system. They're done the right way. But they're not really utilizing that information to do anything better or to report to somebody else to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. That's a leader versus an organizer, if you will. It's kind of 2 different things.
Yeah, very
not
much
quite
so.
the same.
Yeah. And we see a lot of CEOs that are more managers than leaders, just by their personality, just by the way they do things.
Yep. And also back to what I said before, they're a doer in some sense. They're, they're not just, they're the CEO and somehow they're the operations manager at the same time, or they're the CEO and they're the account manager of out of 2. So they're doing something else that an employee is also doing, not atypical for, small business. That's how you start moving up the ladder. But if, you're an $8, $9, $10 million MSP, I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting a lot more demarcation of your levels of people and types of people and true leadership being in there, and management happening at the same time. All that stuff kind of builds up. That's back to the operational maturity. And that's the difference between, this is what slightly different subject, but I'm going to say it anyway. When somebody is new to the buying game and they just want to get their feet wet by buying something like way too small, like $10, $15 million company, I have the wherewithal to do what I need to do and buy something decent size, but I want to buy $1 million company to get my feet wet. And it's usually because I can afford it. If you did, and you are as operational mature as I think you are, why I said I think you can actually successfully buy a company and integrate it, Why would you buy something that is nowhere near that maturity level? Right? It's a given. So you need to build up to that, and I expect companies to be up there. It's not always the case, but that maturity levels, kind of tells you can do a whole bunch of different things. The good news is you don't have to be super maturity. The maturity level has to be super high for you to sell a company. It's just you're going to be looking at different types of buyers and different types of deals that aren't going to be as awesome as as you want them to be, and that all comes down to what's everybody doing in the company. How many people are working a job and a half? How many owners of the company are doing more than one job? Are there a ton of owners? Like nobody really has a true this is what I do and that's all I do kind of thing. It makes a huge difference in the value of the company and the maturity of the company and the difference between people managing stuff and actual leaders. It's all stair steps, right? I don't expect true leadership in a $3 million company. I do expect it in a $10 billion company, and nobody's wearing more than one hat, type of thing. That's just how it should be. And if it's not, then you start losing the luster of the company, the value of the company, and everything else.
This is Cogent Conversations.